Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at CBJ Tech Ab in Sweden, taking a look at the 6.5 by 25mm CBJ cartridge. Now, some of you guys have heard of this and are very excited to be watching the video, but a lot of you probably have never heard of it. So the basic concept behind the 6.5 by 25 CBJ is essentially to allow a pistol or submachine gun to fulfill the armor-piercing requirement or capability of a small PDW cartridge. If you imagine the 5.7 or the 4.6mm cartridges developed as NATO PDW rounds with a heavy emphasis on armor-piercing capability, well, what if you could do that, but in a standard production handgun or submachine gun with only a change in barrel? It's a pretty cool concept, and it's one that has been in development for actually a couple of decades now. So there's a tremendous amount of fine-tuning that goes into making a specialized cartridge, especially an armor-piercing sabot cartridge, work reliably and effectively. It's one thing to make a plastic sabot and throw a subcaliber armor-piercing projectile downrange. It's another thing to be able to do it reliably and accurately, to the level of reliability required of small arms ammunition, where standard number of rounds fired is going to be thousands upon thousands, and a small number of problems ruins the whole thing. So this cartridge was designed by a guy named Bertil Johansson, who's a Swedish firearms designer, and in the late 1980s and early 1990s, he was working at the Carl Gustafstad factory in Eskilstuna, Sweden, which was a factory that made everything from small arms up to artillery-sized munitions. And one of the things that he was working on was a 40mm armor-piercing discarding sabot anti-tank round. And it was seeing that design, that sort of technology, that gave him the idea of what if we scaled this system down to small arms, specifically to pistol ammunition, to use as a PDW or handgun round to give a small weapon like this the capability to punch through a significant amount of armor in a military or police context. So that's essentially what he did, was scale down tank ammunition to handgun size, which requires substantially redesigning it. The concept is the same. The actual execution is very different because of the structural geometry involved. And what they ended up with was a 38.5 grain projectile in a 6.5mm bore. Now, of that 38.5 grains, 31 is built into, or consists of, a hardened tungsten penetrator that's only 4mm in diameter. You then have about 7.5 grains of a dual material plastic and aluminum sabot that wraps around that armor-piercing projectile, acts as a gas check, imparts the proper rotation of the rifling, and acts as a gas seal. And then, most importantly, cleanly and without disturbing the bullet, separates from the projectile when it leaves the muzzle, allowing that armor-piercing projectile to fly accurately, reliably, and quickly. So doing this allows you to get a remarkably high muzzle velocity because you have a high powder volume, you have a small diameter, small volume barrel. So I think this is an element people often don't think about. If I have a 9mm projectile, and let's say a very lightweight bullet, as that projectile moves down the bore, I have a 9mm in diameter tube that gets longer and longer behind the bullet, and that creates a lot of volume that my expanding propellant gas fills up. That reduces the pressure of that propellant gas because it's filling a large volume. If I'm instead only shooting a 6.5mm bullet, the volume of that bore is much smaller, which means your propellant gas remains at a high pressure for a much longer time, allowing you to get a higher muzzle velocity than you would get with a larger diameter bullet, even with the same bullet weights. So out of a standard Glock drop-in barrel, 4-inch, maybe 5-inch, you get about 2,400 feet per second on the 6.5 CBJ. Out of a 9-inch barreled MP5, you get 2,850 feet per second. This is a really high velocity. When coupled with a hardened tungsten projectile, you get a really surprising potential for armor penetration. Now, let's take a closer look here. Let me show you a couple of the other bullets that they make for it, because this is a system that really highlights armor penetrating capability, but it's also one that can be more or less a general purpose cartridge for other law enforcement use. All right, so here's a standard military 9mm parabellum round. The 6.5 CBJ is the same case head and the same overall length. In fact, it's basically the same case body. So this will fit into all standard 9mm parabellum magazines. It will fit 9mm parabellum bolt faces. It's, in order to run it in, say, a Glock, all that's required is a simple barrel change. The same goes for something like an MP5, although of course the MP5 doesn't have a quick detachable barrel, so it's a bit more work to do a barrel change, but you don't need to change the bolt, you don't need to change the magazine. Everything else is compatible because the cartridge has the same base dimensions as 9 parabellum that all these guns are built for in the first place. So this is an example of, they call it APDS, armor piercing discarding sabot. The black is a plastic sabot. There's an aluminum base to that sabot that's inside the cartridge there. And then this is the actual penetrator, the real projectile. So think of this as a shotgun wad holding this guy in place. That's 31 grains, hardened tungsten. And you can see the tip of that penetrator here in the front of the loaded cartridge. This sort of sabot technology has been around for a while, even in small arms. You may think of the Remington accelerator cartridges that fired a .223 caliber bullet in a 30-06 case by using a plastic sabot like this. The difference is, if you don't put a tremendous amount of care and calculation and experimentation and refinement into the design of the sabot itself, you get sabots that don't separate cleanly, which results in poor accuracy, or sabots that occasionally separate badly. So usually the round is accurate, but occasionally it goes flying off somewhere. That's not good. You also want to make sure that the sabot remains as a single piece so that you don't have little sabot shrapnel flying out perpendicular to the muzzle when you fire. That's the case on these. When this fires, there's 6 plastic wings here that open up, but they stay intact as a single unit. They open up like a hollow point, and then because of the weight distribution and the drag, the thing flips around, flies base forward and wings back, and essentially acts like a shot cup. Now, because this is focused on armor piercing capabilities, this is largely intended, well, it's intended to be a military or law enforcement tool. And in order to have that not just be a very specialized tool, they have a variety of other loadings for it as well. We have one with a solid brass bullet, which is the same weight and the same velocity as the armor piercing. However, it has a much reduced effective range. It has much less potential for over penetration. This is the sort of thing that would be ideal in a situation where you just want like regular bullet performance, not exceptional penetration capability. They have a full weight, essentially a subsonic AP loading. So this is also a tungsten projectile, but it's a full 6.5mm diameter, 124 grain projectile traveling at 320 meters per second, and I think about 1,000 feet per second, just under the speed of sound. So that's going to give an option that has less over penetration, but still has some armor penetrating capability. They have a frangible round, they have a blank round, they have a dummy training round as well. Now, it's all well and good to talk about how cool this is and what sort of armor penetration it can accomplish. But in order to really understand it, I think we need to actually try it out. So let's hit the range and see what one of these little guys can actually do. All right, so CBJ has this cool demo that they use to really highlight the armor penetrating capability of this 6.5 by 25mm cartridge. And we're going to do it with a piece of the rear door off of a Russian MTLB. So this is hardened armor plate. It's about 1/4 inch thick. And we're going to shoot it first with plain 9mm parabellum, then with 5.56 SS109, so the semi-armor piercing 5.56, then with a round of M80 ball 7.62 NATO, and then we're going to swap the barrel in that 9mm Glock over to 6.5, and we're going to hit it with a round of 6.5 pistol ammo and see what happens. We don't have a brand new piece of MTLB. We've got one they've already done some shooting on, so every one of the existing hits has been circled. I'll be aiming down here. All right, this is armor that we're shooting, so I'm going to do it from behind a shield. There is the potential for some shrapnel from it. All right, 9 parabellum. Let's see what it did, or more likely, did not do. All right, so I certainly hit it, because I actually bounced this thing a little bit out of its mounting, hit it right there. I have knocked the paint off. There is no tangible deformation to the steel, which you would expect. Like, Russian armor may not be that great, but an MTLB will stop a 9mm pistol. A round of SS-109, semi-armor piercing, 62 grain, 5.56, and we are in Sweden, so of course, we are going to use an AK-5. Let's take a look. All right, so I know some of you guys are going to say, like, the test isn't realistic because the armor plate's not fixed in position and it fell over. But I don't think that's going to make that much actual difference. Here is our semi-AP. So this actually makes a divot in the armor. I can feel it. It's a little jagged in there. Like, that's not bad, but that is nowhere close to actually going through that chunk of armor. So let's scale it up to a 7.62 NATO and see if that'll do it. We are still in Sweden, so the 7.62 NATO rifle, of course, is an AK-4. That knocked that thing right the heck over. But did it put a hole in it? There we go. And the answer is no. We've got another dimple, not quite as jagged as the 5.56, but a little bit deeper. Can't feel any sort of dimple on the backside. Like, if that's me inside that thing, I don't really want to be inside an MTLB, but it gives me some confidence that 7.62 NATO ball just splats off the outside. All right, so this is our 9mm Glock. We'll put in the 6.5 CBJ barrel. Same recoil spring, doesn't even require a change in recoil spring. There we go. And the same magazine as well. And here we go. You think it did anything? I think that made a freaking clean hole right through. So that one's circled. That one was already there. That's my new hit. That's 7.62 NATO. That is very impressive. So what this really does is highlight the impact of, well, frankly, physics. The idea that it's not just about the size of the cartridge, it's about what you're actually throwing downrange. And the right combination of a small diameter, high velocity, hardened, armor penetrating projectile can have shockingly effective results. But you have to have all the other elements that go into the cartridge. You have to be able to have a sabot that seals effectively, that releases cleanly without disturbing the projectile. And that's what the CBJ cartridge has been developed to the point that it can actually do. So this is a specialized requirement. This isn't what you need for IPSC shooting, but for military and law enforcement applications, I think there's potentially a really valuable use case for something that can do this. And I think it'd be really interesting to see this actually put to some real world tests. So CBJ is in a position where they have the technology developed, but they're a small company, they're not an ammunition manufacturer, and they are looking for companies to partner with them to actually produce the ammunition to put this into the field with military or law enforcement agencies who can make the most use of it. So if you're in that position, you know, there's this chicken and the egg problem of no one wants the ammo until the guns are available, but no one wants to make the guns till the ammo is available. And they pretty much bypass that problem by being so intimately compatible with 9mm that all you need is a new barrel. You saw it out of a Glock, like that's pretty easy. All it's waiting for is someone to give it a real world practical use case. So if you're interested, hit them up. Maybe some really good partnership can come of it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'd like to give a big thanks to CBJ for giving me the opportunity to do something really cool like this and to show it to you guys. Thanks for watching.